July morning in the sleepy suburbs of Norwich, England, the sun just warm enough to wake up the sleepy neighborhood. A white van parked quietly on the side of the road, unmarked, unnoticed. The back door opened. 3 large cardboard boxes were wheeled into a seemingly unassuming rental house where everything from the curtains to the lawn spelled normal. But nothing about that morning was normal. Beneath the sealed plywood, hundreds of packets of white powder sat silently, pumping blood to a vast transnational crime machine. There was no gunfire, no bodies. Just coded messages, silent cross-border journeys, and the cold calculation of men who mistakenly thought they had everything under control. Until a mistake as small as a missed message became the spark that burned down the entire operation. This was more than a drug deal. It's a dangerous game between darkness and justice. Subscribe to join me in the case that shook Europe, where every detail, every testimony, and every glance is a piece of the untold truth. In the underground world of cross-border smuggling, the people behind multi-million-pound deals are not monsters. They are people you might stumble across in a supermarket queue. Bert de Jong, 59, from the Netherlands, is not a notorious gunman or a notorious kingpin with a long track record. He is a silent specter, a man who walks across the British border without making a sound, without leaving a trace. With his polished appearance and calm demeanor, de Jong is a vital link between Amsterdam, Europe's drug haven, and the shadowy streets of London, where goods change hands and cash flows back to their source like alternating current. But de Jong does not operate alone. In London, Justin Morris, 23, with a cropped haircut and eyes that always avoid looking directly at the camera, is his go-between. Young, reckless, and overconfident, Morris is the link between the imports and the distribution markets. Accompanying him were Hussein Saki and Zaiba Zahur, a pair who seemed like just friends looking at rental properties, but were actually the links in charge of securing the meeting place and coordinating the scene. 4 men, 4 different styles, but with one thing in common: a deadly calm in the face of crime. None of them had a criminal record. None of them had ever been suspected. And that was what made them the biggest threat. Because in the world of smuggling, the real danger lies not in the men with guns, but in those who bide their time, smile, and disappear before you know it. This was no random smuggling operation, no amateur gamble. From the Netherlands to London, the network was designed like a living organism, with a pulse, and a central brain that worked without missing a beat. The drugs were carefully packaged, hidden in cardboard boxes, lined with thick plywood, and covered with industrial glue, making it difficult for sniffer dogs or X-ray machines to track them without a thorough inspection. The packages were transported across borders in short-term rented trucks, with constantly changing drivers, the journey broken up into small sections like clues hidden in a jigsaw puzzle. In Britain, the stops were not warehouses or ports. They were ordinary rented houses tucked into middle-class neighborhoods where there was enough traffic to conceal them, but not enough to attract attention. Once the goods were landed, Morris or Zahur would appear as tenants or visitors. Saki kept his distance, his eyes scanning the streets, taking in the locations of police cars, public cameras, and even the habits of his neighbors. Everything was calculated: the timing of the deliveries, who answered the door, who carried the box, even how to cover the license plate with fake mud. But no matter how tightly planned, there was always one thing that couldn't be controlled: human error. And it was a slight deviation from that perfect schedule that led to the handcuffs closing in silently from behind. July 16th, 2024. The sun was shining on the suburban streets of Norwich, the summer air carrying a familiar sense of peace that made it easy to ignore the slightest movement. But in the middle of this seemingly harmless scene, a silver van stopped in front of a rented house nestled in the middle of a quiet street. The driver, Justin Morris, 23, wearing a dark t-shirt, got out with the calm demeanor of a delivery man used to his job. A few minutes later, an older man, Bert de Jong, a Dutchman, appeared, and he carried 3 large cardboard boxes inside. On the surface, it was a brief encounter, unremarkable to passers-by. But for the British police, who stood behind the civilian car windows 2 streets away, this was a moment they had been waiting for weeks. The Metropolitan Police's cross-border drugs unit had received a tip from the Dutch about a large shipment that was on its way across the border. And the seemingly innocuous little house had come under scrutiny thanks to its unusual rental history and unidentified phone activity in the area. Morris's behavior was unhurried, but the more he remained calm, the more suspicious the police became. Not long after Morris left, another couple appeared in the area. They claimed to be potential tenants, but their youthful faces and wary demeanor, glancing around, speaking in hushed tones, were quickly identified as inexperienced disguises. They were Hussein Saki and Zaiba Zahur, the 2 gatekeepers in the smuggling scheme. Community surveillance cameras had captured their every move, from the moment they stepped out of the taxi to the moment they stood silently on the street corner, scrolling through their phones but never taking their eyes off the door of the house that had been used as a staging area. Morris, meanwhile, was on his way to Uxbridge, stopping in a deserted car park to send a seemingly innocuous text message. But that text had led the police to an IP address that matched the communications device that had appeared in Europol's database. From there, the police could track not just the person, but the data stream as well. Every call, every SIM swap, every stopover. Without making any arrests, they let each link reveal itself, knowing that a single crack in the chain was enough to reveal the entire mechanism behind it. And as expected, that system, seemingly as tight as steel, began to reveal holes with just a misplaced glance, a poorly timed text message, and an off-script camera. The next day, before the sun had even risen, a team of data analysts from the Metropolitan Police's Special Investigation Unit began piecing together the puzzle. Every GPS coordinate, every deleted text message, every shady contact from an unregistered number. A digital map was created, showing the exact trajectory of Justin Morris's movements over the past 48 hours, including delivery stops, rest stops, and unexpected changes of route that were not part of his regular routine. Meanwhile, Bert de Jong's identity, Dutch, with a business passport and a valid immigration history, was sent to Europol headquarters. Within 3 hours, a response came back with 2 keywords that prompted the team to immediately upgrade the alert level: high-risk contact. De Jong had appeared in an investigation into a cross-border drug network in North Brabant, the Netherlands, but had never been arrested or convicted. A silent ghost, slipping through the cracks without leaving a visible trace. And now he had reappeared in the UK with a similar pattern. No personal phone, no suspicious paperwork, just a series of itineraries that matched deliveries recorded since early 2024. British police knew that if they didn't act quickly, these men could disappear within hours. Or worse, all evidence could be destroyed with a remote wipe. But instead of arresting them outright, they opted for a more dangerous strategy, letting them keep moving, keep operating, in the hope of tracing the rest of the network. On the afternoon of July 17, Morris reappeared, this time at another house in the Hayes area. The van was the same one, but with a man in the passenger seat, Zahur. They stopped, carrying several large boxes, not new cardboard this time, but used ones, a sign that this might be a distribution point rather than a warehouse. A nearby surveillance camera captured Saki appearing a few minutes later, walking, empty-handed, but his eyes constantly scanning the street as if checking for a safe zone. The 3 men did not interact directly with each other, but their actions were so well coordinated that they did not need words like a well-rehearsed play. By now, the police had established the entire route of the group, the possible hiding spots for the goods, and the temporary accommodation de Jong had rented under the pretense of a short-term stay. They knew the moment to strike was approaching, but to bring the highest level of charges, one more element was needed: physical evidence, irrefutable and strong enough to lock it all up in a single trial. They needed to see the goods. They needed to catch them red-handed, and they had less than 36 hours before de Jong was due to board a flight back to Amsterdam. On the night of July 17, 2024, in the quiet darkness of the suburb of Hayes, a team of undercover Metropolitan Police agents quietly approached a house that had been under surveillance for hours. There were no sirens, no flashing lights, just the soft click of boots on the ground. whispered commands over walkie-talkies, and the steel wire eyes of each agent as the perimeter closed. In the brightly lit house ahead, Morris and Zahir were still unaware that their every move was being monitored. When Zahir stepped outside carrying a large duffel bag, the team had enough clues to act. GPS data showed that the bag had been in the same location as the suspected drug package a few hours earlier. At exactly 22:17, the signal went out. 3 teams burst in simultaneously from the front door, the back door, and the ground floor window. Morris was restrained as he bent down to retrieve his phone, and Zahir was restrained before he could react. Meanwhile, the house search team immediately opened cardboard boxes hidden under the bed, inside a self-closing wooden partition. Inside were more than 70 kilograms of pure cocaine, packaged in silver plastic bags with embossed logos, a common sign of shipments from Rotterdam. The police quickly sealed the evidence, while Saki was arrested nearby just a few minutes later when he returned to check on the situation. The 3 were taken to headquarters overnight, completely isolated to avoid information leaks. And as expected, de Jong was completely unaware. On July 23rd, he returned to London on a commercial flight, intending to close the books on the last shipment and prepare for the next one. But this time, at Heathrow, he was greeted not with procedural questions, but with handcuffs and awaiting indictment. The game was over, and the entire line, seemingly invisible, was now stripped bare by a precise, breathtaking squeeze. On April 7, 2025, at Kingston Crown Court, a weeks-long trial officially opened, marking the end of one of the largest international drug trafficking cases ever busted in the United Kingdom. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense as the 4 defendants entered one by one. Justin Morris, his face blank and his eyes daring to look up. Hussein Saki tried to keep his composure, but his hands were clenched and trembling. Zaiba Zahir was silent, almost disappearing from view, and Bert de Jong, the center of the ring, appeared calm, his face stony, as if this trial were just another accounting incident on his schedule. The prosecutors presented a series of evidence. The containers containing more than 70 kilograms of cocaine were just the tip of the iceberg, while the data extracted from phones, surveillance cameras, GPS tracking, and especially the handwritten notebook in Dutch that de Jong carried, with a detailed list of each shipment, the initials of the contacts, and the corresponding amounts of money, was the key that brought down the defendants' entire defense. The defense tried to argue that the defendants were merely hands on the wheel, that they were lured by debt or poverty, but the prosecutors dashed that hope by asserting that each of them was an active and essential part of the supply chain, that this was a system designed with sophistication and reach across borders. This was more than just a drug case. It was a clear demonstration of how organized crime is expanding internationally. By May 19th, the verdicts were clear and merciless. Bert de Jong was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Morris, despite his early guilty plea, was sentenced to 12 years and 6 months. Saki to 14 years. Zahir to 6 years and 10 months. The courtroom was silent. No arguments, no tears, no screams. Just the echoes of a legal victory and an unspoken warning. No plan, no matter how elaborate, can survive forever in the dark. The case has been closed with a verdict, but its aftershocks still linger like toxic fumes in the backstreets of transnational crime. The nearly 500 kilograms of cocaine seized is just the tip of a vast drug trade that moves across European borders day and night through silence, cash, and anonymous faces. There is no glory in this game of crime, only costs, sometimes a lifetime behind bars. For Londoners, the case is a reminder that even the quietest neighborhoods can become transit points for the most dangerous networks. For law enforcement, it is a testament to the power of patience, modern investigative technology, and international cooperation. For audiences, it is a chilling glimpse into an underworld most of us never see. Please share, comment, and subscribe to the channel to continue accompanying us in exposing crimes that seem invisible but are breathtakingly real.